Well, hello, and welcome to Adding Instruction to a Sparring Practice. This is a class for King's College 2021. I am your instructor, Sir Malgwyn Tha, and I've been doing some sparring within the SCA for a rather long time, but I got started in modern fencing, so I've had some other experiences as well. And there's a very noticeable contrast between the way we teach sword fighting or any other kind of fighting in the SCA versus how you see it in a more structured, formal classroom setting. I have to say there's some weaknesses to just throwing people out at fighter practice and letting them jump around and stab each other. That's a lot of fun. People have a great time with it. It's an important part of it, but it's also helpful to give them some more structured instruction from time to time. So this class is about how to include a little more formal instruction in an opportunity in a location that's really more, where people have more of an expectation of doing a sparring practice. And I want to acknowledge that doing formal instruction is a lot of work. It's an all volunteer organization. None of us are getting paid to do this work. When the Queen made me a companion to the Order of the White Scarf, she did not charge me to show up on Tuesday at 7:30 at night in Ringala to teach sparring practice. That wasn't a specific part of my charge. So it's not anyone's specific job to teach formally at any particular practice. And so what generally happens is that no one does it. And then we have no formal instruction at all. So to make this work, we're going to have people volunteering, stepping up, and making plans and putting these classes together. And who will this benefit? This is going to be of huge benefit to the people who aren't aggressively interested, who aren't extroverted, who are not, shall we say, loud. The person who is highly motivated will manage to learn no matter what. They will seek out instruction. They will hunt the teachers down. They will make it work for them. The rest of the people who might be very, very interested in sword fighting, they might like sword fighting, but if they can't figure out how to learn without just going out and getting stabbed a whole bunch, they're going to fade away. And our retention and recruiting has not been stellar over the last few decades. So maybe this is something that we could try that would improve our odds for keeping people in our aspect of the game, for keeping people in the game at all. I would want to make mention of the different mentalities. Really think a lot about the teaching that Doña Marie has been doing about the tiger mentality versus the wolf mentality. Some people like to be part of a group being taught, and the one-on-one instruction is too embarrassing for them, or for other reasons. The one-on-one instruction, let's fight for a little while, and then I'll tell you about what you're doing. That is not appealing to some people. They'd rather be part of a class and get some formal instruction and try to do what they've been taught. So, in order to make this less work, it will really help if people who create lesson plans and formal instruction will share it, because it's a lot easier to take someone else's lesson plan, perhaps modify it to emphasize the things you think are most important, or use drills that you actually know how to do, but then to use that rather than having to create your own from scratch every time. We can also lean on some published works, like some of Guy Windsor's materials, Ken Monshine's new book. There's lots of material out there. It's being published to help people learn Renaissance rapier combat, German longsword, the whole spectrum of material that's out there. So if you're going to try to run a formal class, there's some things that we need to look at. I've got a checklist of 7 key things. 1, establish expectations and get agreement. 2, limit the time. 3, do a gathering activity. 4, have a plan. 5, teach one, do one. 6, cover 3 main ideas and no more. 7, give drills and exercises to do at home. So let's look at each of these in more depth. So 1 was establish expectations and get agreement. If everyone else at fighter practice thought they were coming to a typical SCA fighter practice, they might be a little surprised to learn that there's going to be some formal instruction available. So you might start by talking it up weeks or months in advance, saying, hey, first weekend in May, there's going to be a Rapier Basics class available, just going to take half an hour. Rapier Basics class will be taught at Bring the Loud Fighter practice starting at 7:30 under the tree. Then that day arrives, you get up on top of a picnic table or wherever you can be seen and say, hey, we're going to start the Rapier Basics class in 5 minutes. Come on over here, bring your sword, you don't need your mask. Come on over, let's get started. That way they understand what's going to happen, and the people who come to it are volunteering to receive instruction. I've learned sometimes the hard way that not everyone is volunteering to receive instruction, and sometimes they think it's even a little bit rude if you offer them instruction when they haven't asked for it. So get some buy-in, make an announcement, get the people who agree to come in. Pick a place, again, under the tree, here by the picnic table, over there by that park bench, whatever you can do. Get a few feet away from everybody else. So the person who just came off the field is hot and sweaty and they want to talk about what just happened with their sparring partner and drink some water. They're not interrupting your class. So get a little bit of their own place for the class. And then let the students opt in. Again, their decision to join the class. You can't force them to, just like you weren't mandated to teach the class, they weren't mandated. No one told them they had to attend in order to graduate high school or anything else that they thought was important. So you don't have the leverage of a public school teacher. You need to get your students to opt in on their own volition. Number 2, limit the time. 30 minutes is pretty good. 45 is probably pushing it. You're stretching the attention span. So I would try to limit your formal instruction to a planned 30 minutes. Now, if there are lots of questions or people are just having too much fun with the games you're teaching or the techniques you're going over, it's okay to make it go a little longer if they're driving the length and not you. If you've got 45 minutes of serious instructional content that you want to include, it's time to split it and include part of that in the next class. Limit the length of instruction segments. So if you've spent 5 minutes talking to somebody, it's time to get their hands on something, sword, pole arm, whatever it is you're teaching, and let them do. So don't give a 20-minute lecture and then we'll have 5 minutes of sparring at the end. The purpose of a fighting class is for them to fight, and they will learn more if they have to step through the actions. So give a short explanation, have them do it, maybe give some correction, have them do it some more. You can take a little longer, both for your total class and for your section of instruction, if you can keep it funny. Again, I would love to say that all of our students are absolutely motivated and you can be as boring as possible and they will still hang on every word because they want to kill people. Unfortunately, that is not going to work in the real world. If you can keep it funny, keep it entertaining, your students will be willing to stay and listen longer. Up to number 3, do a gathering activity. And I have to admit, I stole this idea from soccer coaching because the students never all arrive at the same time. And even if they did, they wouldn't all be ready to start at the same time. And they're not sure if you're really serious about starting yet either. So if you have a starting activity, a gathering activity, it could be a kind of a warm-up, perhaps a fun game. It's something that people are obviously doing something. And the people who have showed up for class and are ready to start doing something can do this, but you're not kicking into your main presentation of the evening so that people who aren't there yet aren't going to miss the key introduction, the key part of your instruction. So it's a gathering activity. It can be a game, it can be a warm-up, it could be, it's just something to let everybody who's still getting their water bottle filled or thinking about getting their sword out of the car says, oh, they're starting now, I should get over there. And by the time they get there, you haven't already finished your first presentation, you're just ready to start. Okay, number 4, have a plan. Seriously, a plan. I know this is a shocking heresy in the SCA, probably lots of other combat games as well, but actually having a lesson plan and presenting from the plan works really well and creates better instruction than just, well, I know lots about fighting, so I'm just going to show up and wing it. Doesn't work. When you have a 5-person class, every minute you spend in class has to be worth 5 minutes of other people's time. So craft a good plan. Use your time cautiously and carefully. Now that doesn't have to be a novel for every week. It can be an outline. An outline's enough if it reminds you of what you plan to cover. So if you have an outline and you spend half your class time trying to remember what it was you meant by that line full of abbreviations, then that's not good enough. But if you can just say, toe pointed forward, advance and retreat, okay, that's what I wanted to work on. We'll do that now. So it does not have to be narrative. There's no bonus points for good grammar in your lesson plan, as long as it makes sense to you. Now, if it makes sense to other people, it's a lot easier to share your lesson plan. So that's a bonus. Progress in your lesson from very basic activities to more advanced ideas. So you introduce an idea and then build on it. Don't do 3 unrelated advanced ideas or 3 unrelated basic ideas, and then the advanced students are all going, I knew this 10 years ago. So build from basic to more advanced, keeping in mind both your best and least advanced student have something there informative and challenging for each of them. Include in your lesson plan some notes on things you want to watch for. There are common mistakes people tend to make. Yes, pick your foot up. Don't drag your foot across the grass. No, don't turn your front foot sideways. Point your front toe toward your opponent. The things that you want to make sure you catch and correct, put into the lesson plan, because sometime you'll have a class where no one does it wrong, but you still want to mention it because they're going to forget. And next week they'll do it wrong if you didn't call out the point. So make sure those elements are in there. Beware of rambling. There are always related ideas to whatever it is you're teaching that you could veer off onto, but don't. Plan what you're going to include what's in your plan. Don't go off on a tangent. If there's a new idea that you want to include in, put that into next week's plan. Okay, as soon as you have taught a concept, this is the teach one, do one, or section 5. As soon as you taught a concept, give the students a chance to practice it. So teach it, perhaps demonstrate it. Here's an inclusion tip. Frequently use your less skilled or less confident class members as your sparring partner for the demonstration. It does make them seen in front of others, but it gets them more direct observation, direct correction, direct attention from the instructor. Whether that's male students versus female students, younger students versus older students, that's not the point. Make sure that you include everyone as your sparring partner during instruction. And by all means, start with the least confident students, showing that being a sparring partner doesn't mean you're going to beat them. It means that you're going to teach them. Okay, so introduce the concept, have the students practice the concept. Often this is going to be something where they need to pair off and practice it while I critique. Now, if I'm going to critique, that means I can't be one of the pairs, which means if you've got an even number of students, you're great. And if you have an odd number of students, you have a problem. So it's good to have a ringer, whether that's a cadet or a squire or someone who lives at your house that you practice this with. It's good to have a ringer handy that's not planning to be a student who needs to pair off with someone, but can jump in and be the pair with somebody who's the odd person out. So that therefore the instructor can walk around and provide feedback for all the pairs of students. Work with each student equally. Don't focus on just the best or just the worst. If all of your teaching time is spent on getting your worst student to not cross their feet, then you're going to lose the advanced students pretty quickly. You've got to give each student some teaching time. And maybe after class, you work more with a student who needs more help, or you work more with a student who wasn't really challenged by your lesson today and needs you to take it up a couple notches and do some higher speed sparring. All right, topic number 6, cover 3 main ideas, no more. Well, I have to admit, this is a little bit like the Celtic triads. If you're familiar with Celtic memorization techniques, sometimes 3 means 3 plus 1 more. The 3 singing kings of Britain. There's 1 and 2 and 3, and then there was Arthur, because he's such a class by himself. cover 3 main ideas. Sometimes you can squeeze in a fourth, but don't make it a habit. There's 100 things you'd like to pour into their heads. Don't. It won't work. Their heads won't hold it. Covering 3 ideas will take your available attention time without being overwhelming. All right, so you're going to get 3 ideas. You're going to tell them what your goals are for the day. You're going to give them those, 3 ideas up front. Then you're going to teach those 3 things, and you're going to sum up by saying what 3 things they should have learned today. So get those 3 things in there. And when the cup is full, stop pouring. You'd really like, again, I've been fighting for 41 years now. There are a lot of things I would like to take out of my head and pour into each of my students. It doesn't work that way. Trying to go on longer won't make it work better. Offer to spar with the students afterwards to reinforce the concepts, but keep your structured class time to about that 30-minute goal. Number 7, give drills and exercises to do at home. This is important because there are a lot of ways for a fighter to improve, but not everyone knows what they are. And you can't just assume that every student has read several books on sports medicine and physiology and understands the difference between strength training and cardio training and skill training, and knows what skills to train or even how to train them. So giving those kinds of drills and exercises is important, but no one is going to really get good by doing a drill once in class or even once a week in class. They have to be given as a take-home exercise. Partner drills are great, but not everyone has a partner at home. So make sure you include a good number of take-home drills that they can do solo. Because now they've gone from getting a half an hour of working on improving their fighting every week to having an opportunity to spend a lot of time every week improving their fighting. So we have to share some of this knowledge with the folks who don't know how to do it or don't know what it is they need to do. Some will do it. Some will not do it all, and they'll come back and go kind of sheepish and stub their toe and say, yeah, I know you taught us roach stomps, but I didn't do them. And they say, okay, we'll try it again next week. And next week they go, yeah, I know you taught us roach stomps, so I didn't do them. Like, okay, that's all right. Your choice. Some will surprise you by not doing any of the drills or exercises you taught them. And then 6 months or a year later, suddenly they decided they want to get better. And they start doing the drills and they start doing the exercises and they start practicing the skills that you try to teach them. And sometimes they'll even tell you they've done it. Often they don't. You just go, hey, so-and-so started getting better. What's going on? Oh, they're actually doing those things we talked about in class. All right. There's always room at the top of our game for those who will work harder. This is one of the joys of amateur sports. Our Queen's Champion tournament is not populated by professional athletes. There are very few people there who are putting in more than 15 hours a week of training time. There may be some. There is room at the top for people who will work harder. But some folks will do that entirely on their own and others won't. So providing this formal instruction opens that door to a larger pool of people. All right, I've covered 7 ideas. Good thing this is not a technique class because we learned to always stop at 3 ideas. So those are the 7 ideas. The rest of the handout is a set of sample lesson plans from the Rapier Basics class series that I have taught a couple of times. And I'm not saying that this is the best way of teaching Rapier Basics. It is a way. And if you're not going to use these lesson plans, feel free to use them to inspire you to write up your own set of lesson plans. I would love it if at every local fighter practice, someone, whether that's the local marshal or a local Don or Knight or MOD, or just of the 3 guys who show up for fighter practice, this one went to Queen's Champion once and actually did some sparring with a couple of Dons afterwards. I mean, if you are the most advanced fighter by virtue of 6 months more experience, then you're the most advanced fighter. Take what you do know, put it into a class, offer to teach it. Most local practices will have someone with a little more experience than that, and all of you have access to online resources, videos, books. There's a ton of material out there. Pick material, work on it. Really, you really can't go wrong. You will advance faster by studying. If you pick the wrong Italian master to study, you'll still advance faster than if you don't study any of them. Just put it that way. So here we have moving and balance. We talk about what our goals are, what drill we're going to do, and what things we're going to do to practice these techniques, and then something to do at home. And I can just say roach stomps because I know exactly what that is. And if you don't know what roach stomps are, you can ask me or any of my students, and they will tell you in painful detail. All right, so here's a lesson titled Clean Attacks. Again, identify what the goals are, what drills are we going to do to help people learn the things that are in our goals, things to watch out for, and some things to do at home. In this case, some strength work to do at home. Again, I don't think I need to go through all of these. You can see the structure here. When you're running a class, show them what it is you're planning to teach them, then go through it, give them some things to take home to work on. And some of that can be skills training, some of that can be basic conditioning. The lifting a jug on a string where you have a dowel with a cord tied to it and a milk jug half full or all the way full, depending on your wrist strength level, and a string between the two, and you just roll the string up on the dowel and roll it back down. Roll it up, roll it down. You want to make it advanced? Turn your hands over, roll it up, roll it down. It's does not take a gymnasium, does not take a Gold's Gym membership. You can do it in about 3 square feet of space. Anybody's apartment is big enough to do this in. Anyway, the rest of these Rapier Basics classes are there as examples. I've done this approach with a Rapier Basics class. I've done this approach with teaching Degrassi's rapier and dagger techniques, going through his manual, spending the time to build a lesson plan, translating what he says in the translating from the original old Italian to modern English, and then what does this really mean to us, and can I communicate this to students? Creating that lesson plan was very challenging. It was a lot of work. Actually, we were eventing a lot at the time, and I'd be driving and Willow would be taking notes, and she'd say, it says this, now how are we going to teach that? And we would talk it back and forth while driving back from events, because that's when we had time. But you could do a lesson plan like this for Fiore's longsword technique. You could do a lesson plan like this for, maybe you spent some time watching a particularly good fighter. Say, oh, I've been paying attention to what it is that that I think John Drake's doing, and I'm going to do a 5-week class series on fight like John Drake. And you might not get it perfect, but you'll teach more trying to do that than you'll teach if you just say, oh, let's grab our swords and jump around and stab each other. So that's my thesis, that we can teach better and more by having formal instruction, that every practice can do it, and that I am very happy to share the resources that I've created to help make it easier. And are there any questions?
I have a question. What do you do if you have a mixed level class where you've got beginners and more experienced students to keep them all engaged?
That can be a challenging situation. If you have a mixed level class, you have to find some way to make the material both useful and accessible to the beginner, and then still useful to the more advanced students. So again, you might start with a basic idea, and at some point in the lesson, you might say, now, beginning students, practice that some more. Advanced students, let's try another variation on that. Let's take this one step further. And that way you're adding the more advanced instruction without leaving out the beginning students. The time may come where you have to say, our local practice has a really diverse group of students, and the stuff I want to teach the advanced students, that's just not going to work well for the beginners. So I'm going to do a Rapier Basics class at 7:30 take a little breather at 8, and at 8:30 I'm teaching advanced Degrassi footwork. So at some point you may just have to split the class, but meanwhile there's some things you can do to keep everybody engaged.
I know we talked about setting some goals for that at the very beginning of the process.
Right. So when we talk about the goals, and I usually will pick 3 goals to explain at the beginning of class. Sometimes you'll divide a goal and say, I want the beginning students to learn, which way is up, and I want the advanced students to learn to fly up to 3 feet off the ground.
Would you be willing to adapt this to a general teaching, like kind of, what would you say, manifesto?
This one is really focused on the teaching of physical skills, but
Mm-hmm.
it probably does, certainly applies on both of our combat fields. I'm sure you wouldn't have to change more than 6 words for it to apply to AmpGuard. I don't know about anybody else's game.
It applies to any skill set that's a physical skill. It doesn't have
Yeah, it's like it would apply to just about any skill set. Like having a take-home thing would be a really excellent thing to add to a scribal class or a null binding class, and having something prescribed to practice would be very useful to continue to engage students. But I don't think that's something that everybody thinks about. So if we would just if we could just make a basic guideline, like if you're trying to teach, you want to teach about 3 things. You want to teach, if you have advanced and separate and beginning students, you need to teach them separately and you need to engage both. I really think that this would be I really think we could make a useful class for all kinds of teaching.
Yeah, I'd like to partner in that with someone with a more formal background in what they call pedagogy. Basically, we have so many teachers in the SCA, it'd be a shame not to get one involved in teaching about teaching.
Precisely.
But I think I'd want a partner to work with on trying to make a more generalized class. A lot of my experience has been, again, training as a soccer coach and then being a SCA combat practitioner for, rather a long time.
Sure. And I think we all have, between you and I and Willow, I think we have a very good basis in teaching. And I think we could probably pull that together.
Yeah.
Can I write
Willow's background has fed into this, and she points out a lot of hers came from the things that were taught as a Girl Scout leader.
Train the trainer, how to teach adults.
Precisely. So why don't I write up a short Google Doc? I'll run it by you guys and then we can build on it.
Okay. Yeah, that could be good. Right now, I think especially in this post-pandemic recovery phase that we're launching into, I think this is a really good time for us to ramp up some instruction at our local practices. And that's really the quest I'm pursuing.
Guys, it's that time of year. It's time for the.
Sorry. Yeah, that's a great idea. I will try to write something up this evening and I'll run it by you guys. I'll do it on Google Docs so we can all edit it and we'll just put the basics together and then work from there.
By the way, I think we just recorded all of this discussion, which is not.
Yeah, I know, it's fine.
That's okay.
I think unless you have questions about the content we just covered, let's go ahead and stop the recording and then we can chat and discuss future plans.
Absolutely. I apologize.
But all right.
No worries.
More?